I'm Sarah Kinsella. I'm an SLP and focusing on AAC, Augmentative Alternative Communication, with the Special Education Technology Center. I live in Seattle. And Brenda?
Yeah, I am a communication device specialist and I live in Arizona right now. I do communication device evaluations and trainings for the state of Arizona and consult all over for that. But I'm originally from Washington, 37 years. Okay, so we are going to take a brief look at alternative access for AAC and vision. And I think for me, what I want is everyone who is working with children with vision issues to know what's possible. There's lots of possible fits for different kids. So I just want to show you a few videos, honestly, of just how different kids with visual impairments can access communication. Some of it's using what little vision they have, and some of it requires no vision at all. And so I wanted to just kind of throw it out there for you, just a reference point. I do between 300 and 400 evaluations a year, and I have my data shows that about 40% of people with AAC have some visual impairment. And I did that through some research that I've done a couple years ago. But if anything, it's only gone up because ophthalmologists are getting better at diagnosing cortical visual impairments. So let's see. Okay, wait. Oh yeah. So we want to just first show you like what can it look like to access communication if your vision is poor. So right off the bat, I have to go out of this and I'm going to play a video of this little gal. And I hope you can hear it. Tell me if you can't.
All right, we're all done swinging.
Can you hear it? Okay.
What our choices are, honey. Think about it.
Water speakers. Swing. I want to swing.
You want to swing. Good job.
So right off the bat, that is what we call two-step scanning with auditory preview, which is a lot of jargon to say I'm hitting one switch to listen to choices, and I'm hitting the other switch when I hear the one I want. So one is scanning through your choices, and I usually make that red, like not that one, not that one, not that one. And then that's the one is usually a green switch, again, not for my users, but for my people who are doing the setup. So that's what you saw there. So that's called auditory preview. That's listening for your choices and hitting a switch when you hear the one you want. It can be done in low tech where you're just saying, I'm going to give you three choices. Do you want to go outside? Do you want a snack? Or do you want your vibrating pillow? Hit the switch when you hear the one you want, and maybe the switch is just says that's the one. So auditory preview means I am giving you choices and you're hitting a switch when you hear the one you want. And it's very important when we're working with children with visual impairment to have those switches in consistent locations so they're not fishing for them. And that we're using that consistent vocabulary. Hit the switch when you hear the one you want. Not hit the switch when you hear bubbles, because then it's not communication at all. It's just following directions, right? So it's like creating that autonomy. Hit the switch when you want it. And then not testing or judging on that, meaning not saying, oh, I don't think that's the one you wanted. It's hit the switch when you hear the one you want. They hit the switch. She hit the switch for the swing. Then she gets to go and experience the language she just heard. I heard swing. That's my clue. When I hit the other switch, that's the one I want. It says, I want to go swing. And then she gets to go experience the language of swing. Our kids need to experience the language of their selections before we test them. Did they mean to do that? Verbal children will often say, no, 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 no. And they experience, oh, do you want ice cream? The kid says, no. Then they experience no. You put the ice cream away and they go, wait, 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 right? And they realize it matters which word I say. Same goes with switches. So we're listening to the one we want. We hit the switch when we hear the one we want. We experience what we selected in the language we're experiencing. And then we let that guide our learning. So one way for children with visual impairments to access language is no visual requirements, and that's that auditory preview. You'll notice in the video we had the switches on their head, because if we have switches where you have to use their hand, that often still requires vision and still requires eye-hand coordination. And needless to say, the girl in the video had none of that. She doesn't have great vision and she has no functional use of hands. So we take the demands of vision out when we put it on the head switch, one, because it's the first motor skill to develop and the last to decline, but also because we're not actually relying on their vision. We're letting their tactile system, which is often stronger if their vision is low, to find that switch with their head. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think we'll pause for questions in a minute because I know this is a lot of information, but in this video with this girl, she did have the device available so she could look at it. So Brenda, does she have some vision and she does look at it some, but is listening too?
So actually, she in the beginning did not have the vision. So in that video, I span over to show just for the video's sake, but I'm standing in front of it because if we put the device in front of her, she was trying to look at the device and she wouldn't move her head at all. And so she had what appeared to be a little bit of a competing system where when she's listening, she wasn't able to use her vision. When she's trying to use her vision, she wasn't able to process language. So in her case, we started where we mounted the device behind her, where there's no demands of language. And then as she got more used to her system and I mean, in this video, she is just turning 3. So now she's 9 and she has the device in front of her and she has 16 buttons and her vision has improved a little bit, but not enough for eye gaze, not enough, no hand control for other ways to do it. So she still accesses her device the same way. So sometimes we do want the device in front of them because their vision is supporting them. Sometimes in the beginning of vision development, it's such a high cognitive task to make my eyes try to see something that we don't put the device in front of them. So that's a good question too, or comment on that. Any questions about that way of accessing communication?
Question from the audience. Do all communication devices have auditory preview as an option?
So there are apps on the iPad that can, and this one is GoTalk and it can, and there's lots of them that don't have that option. Other devices have varying degrees of this, meaning maybe it will scan row and column, but it won't do one by one. And so then the auditory preview gets messed up because you don't know, it can't list everything in the row that could be in this row. So when you're using auditory preview, there are certain devices that are better that can allow for a better clue, so that they can access language easier. And there are lots of systems that really don't have great auditory preview. Some of it depends on the body. So some systems have great auditory preview, but when you plug in the switch, when she hits the switch, it just keeps going. And so they don't have a way to just do a single shot. So there's a lot of combinations to consider in scanning, because like for her, she's leaning on that yellow switch initially. And so if in other systems that would have just moved to the next one, whereas the iPad with GoTalk with a certain switch interface, well, you have to come off the switch and come back on. But I know that gets really technical really fast if I get into all of the single shot. So I just wanted to be sure, kind of surface level, what is switch access to communication and what does it look like? And sometimes we do partner assisted where someone else is hitting the switch to go through choices And the student is only hitting the switch when they hear the one they want, when they're initially learning to. So there's lots of ways to learn parts of scanning and scaffold in the next skill.
I was wondering if you have a favorite interface for switches to talk to iPads. Like,
Yes. I like the applicator by Praetorian, and it is sold by Inclusive TLC. And that one is the one that allows you to set up the student for hit the switch, you have to come off the switch and come back on it for it to move on to the next one. And if you don't have vision, if you're laying on the switch and it just keeps going, they don't know it keeps going, right? So that is the only Bluetooth applicator, so the only kind of remote control, so to speak, that I use with switches on the iPad. And I, by the way, I have told many of the other makers of these things, if you just added that one feature, I would love this Bluetooth, right? So it's just, but for me with my kiddos with complex bodies that are learning switch access, they need to have a single shot. And we have at the SETC website, YouTube channel, we have videos on how to set all that up too, Colleen. So another one is auditory preview without switches. So let me show you what that one looks like. This is Max, and he has no vision, and he is touching it to hear the choice, and then he touches it again to make the selection. And he has a key guard on the iPad so he can feel where the buttons start and stop.
Drink. Drink. No. I want milk, please. Milk. To drink. To drink. To listen to. To listen to. Instrument. Instruments. Household items. Music. Music. Okay, back to the home page. Country. Alexa, play country music.
So let me just explain what you saw there. So what you saw there was he has an iPad mini with 16 buttons on it, and he's able to anchor his hand around the side of the iPad to reach each button. Now, the auditory cue is a female voice. It's actually my voice, and it's like, I want. If that's the button he wants, he hits it again, and it's a child voice. It's a boy voice that says, I want. And we use that like, okay, that's the girl voice. Those are your choices. The boy voice is your voice. And so then he's listening to drink, to listen to music. And then when he hits it again, it says to listen to music in the boy voice. So he was able to run his Alexa. He was able to do so many things. And his trick was he is ambulatory. And I will tell you that a student that is blind and not speaking and walking around is really, really challenging because you can't put switches in consistent spaces for them, right? So for him, it made more sense to teach him how to use his hand to listen, and then hit it again when you hear the one you want. That's still auditory preview. But it's just without switches. Basically, the screen is used like a switch in that way.
And I'll just add that for both of these examples, for this student using his finger and for the one using the girl using switches, the consistency of the buttons and the layout and how it's presented is so key, right? Because if we keep changing where those buttons end up or where what's on different cells, it's hard to get used to, just like when my husband took my phone and reordered some of my apps. And I was like, what? Where did my mail go? So just that consistency in how we present the auditory cue and then how the buttons stay on the system.
And I will say too, yeah, you make a good point. So the research that Linda Burkhart does on auditory scanning, which has been around for decades, is to keep the sequence the same and add to the end of it. And when you see a person who is very good at switch access with auditory preview, it almost looks like Morse code. They're like gunk 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 gunk, and then so it's like, and they say, "Hi, how are you?" And you're like, "Whoa, where'd that come from?" So they do get used to it's 1 2 3 4 1 2 1 1 2 1 1 1, and then they know they're like, "My address is," and you're like, "Wow." So they do learn the motor plans to specific things that they get to all the time, and you don't want to change that around. That's so true. So that is one. Sarah, the next one is partner assisted scanning. It might be one of your videos. No?
Can you, I know here, let me like look at our,
I don't have this on video.
oh yeah, this one is not a video. This is, because I think we were going through them and then we described them below, but
Yeah, partner
you
assisted
cover-
means that, yeah, the communication partner is touching the buttons, and the communicator learning is only responsible to hit the switch when they hear the choice they want.
or sometimes this could be with a light tech system. So you're going through options, and there's a video on what this might look like later. And then your student is indicating, yes, that's the one I want. So we always talk about how important it is for our students to have a yes and like an affirmation and negation that is with their body somehow. So they can do that, because at the end of the day, students are going to be using lots of different methods to access communication. They're not going to do partner assisted scanning their whole day, probably, or eye gaze their whole day. There's lots of different reasons and situations that they're going to use different options. Does anybody have questions about what this means, partner assisted scanning? Brenda, if you want to go down, I know we're still up in the top, but I think we were doing like a brief look and then going deeper, but there is a little right there on that 9. Yeah. I think I might not have put this link in the handout, which we have, but I will add it. We'll just play a few seconds.
She would raise her hand. I would say, "Oh, your hand is raised. You have something to say." And I would begin scanning. I scan each column one at a time. Quick chat, something's wrong. I think it's, if she says yes, then I scan each one individually. Quick chat, something's wrong. I think it's yes. She says yes to I think it's. The number 4 tells me what page I need to go to.
You can stop there, Brenda. So this is an example of that's called a pod communication book, and there's a specific way that you use that to scan through. But the idea is what Brenda was talking about earlier, that you're going to go through, you're listing the options, you're waiting for an affirmation or a negation, and then moving on and making it very predictable. So it's the same way you present it each time.
Right. So that is all switches or using your hands with different levels of support. Another way is a way that they are using a system that the rest of us would use with their eyes, but they could memorize where the location of every button is to talk. She is using her hands to read Braille, and then using her device to to tell the teacher what she's read. And she has memorized the location of these core words that are in the sentence, right? She is able to feel the location, and it's 84 buttons. She has such great motor skills that she is able to use direct select on this. Even though she's not using, we're not expecting her to use any vision because she doesn't have any. So it's so important because I'm pretty fairly certain the most under-referred population that's not functionally verbal are those with visual impairments. And I think it's mostly because it's not common knowledge to understand how someone without vision could access systems that we believe to be very visual because we see them. I just feel like it's a little bit incomplete without saying, so they can use switches, they can use tactile, and they can use eye gaze if you determine that that is their relative strength. So I don't have to get into a lot of eye gaze and I don't have to show all the eye gaze videos, but I can. And we do start with big icons and we do trial high contrast and there's a lot of options there. And there's a combination, meaning they could use switches to listen to their choices and their eyes to make the final selection. So there's a lot of combinations that can be put together with various devices. So the bottom line is which one do you choose is the question, right? And so what you can talk about in your discussion groups is about specific students and which things you would try. But it would be to think about what is their relative strength. Is it their motor skills? Is it their listening skills? Or despite the visual impairment, is it their vision? So that's what we're always looking at and making sure that we are providing more than one way to access language throughout their day.
Mm-hmm. And I think just a really quick piggyback to what Brenda's saying is that we didn't get into the eye gaze, but that there are settings in many devices that can help support students. So there may be things that you've seen or you haven't seen that you might consider. And that's what I think we can help with sharing about too at some point.
Sure.